Good morning. Today I want to talk about Hotwire and the landscape after Turbo 8 was released. So I'm super happy to be here at Helvetic Ruby in my home country to actually do a talk in person, which is super awesome. So earlier this year, we got the Turbo 8 release, and this kind of changed what was happening in the Hotwire ecosystem, at least from what I am seeing. If you haven't met, I'm Marco. Nice to meet you. If you have any stuff you want to talk about Hotwire, feel free to find me after the talk. I've been on the core team on StimulusReflex and CableReady over the past few years, and I've been maintaining Stimulus for the past few years too. So it's safe to say I kind of love open source, and I had an awesome journey so far on open source. I've been working on open source since 2019 actively. I have been part of the Hacktoberfest program back then, and since then I got into open source and have been enjoying it really much. I went full-time on open source to work on Hotwire and related technologies in 2022 and started contracting last year to continue working on open source at least part-time. I love Ruby and I also love Rails, and I want to keep building Rails apps with Hotwire. So I feel like the combo of Rails and Hotwire is kind of a superpower, especially if you pair it with Rails. The stack is really awesome. You get to work on the stuff you already know and love, and you get to build modern Rails applications. And personally, to me at least, that's the future of modern Rails apps. With Rails 7, we got kind of halfway there with that vision to get to that awesome state where we have Hotwire built into the framework by default. And in my opinion, this kind of fueled the Rails renaissance that we have been seeing the last few years. There has been a lot of hype about Hotwire and Rails again, and I think partly it's due to Hotwire and its success. Rails itself has been really smooth, fast, and enjoyable to work with, and it kind of felt like Hotwire is this missing piece, this missing puzzle piece, to make Rails, this full-stack framework, kind of work again. So, as an open source enthusiast, I want to make Hotwire the best framework it can be, so it's as accessible and as approachable as possible to everyone, especially in this time where we have this hype kind of going on. So I want to build modern tools, modern front-end tools to make modern Rails apps, and modern front-end tools that are worthy of the Rails framework in its history. So earlier this year, we got Turbo 8, which introduced a bunch of new features, including morphing, page refreshes, and view transitions, and a few other things. And for me, it changed the trajectory of the framework quite a bit, and the ecosystem as well. So what's Hotwire? It's an acronym for HTML over the wire, and the idea is that we want to use HTML as the format for our application. The server is a single source of truth, and we want to build our business logic on the backends while writing HTML. And we don't want to duplicate, any logic on the front end while building our applications. So Hotwire is not about getting rid of JavaScript, it's about reducing the amount of JavaScript that's needed for your application itself. So we want to reduce the application-specific JavaScript. But how do we get here to this point? I want to talk about the time of the history so we know where we are. In 2012, we got TurboLinks alongside Rails 3.2. And in 2013, we got TurboLinks by default in Rails with Rails 4. TurboLinks was this idea of making the web navigation faster by not re-evaluating scripts and style sheets on every page navigation. It was also this time where probably most of us were using Rails new --skip TurboLinks because nobody really knew what was going on and didn't really understand what's actually happening. So I think TurboLinks was kind of a decade ahead of its time. With Rails 5 in 2016, we got TurboLinks 5, and it kind of changed the way we work with it quite a bit as well. If you haven't seen this talk by Sam Stevenson, I think it's the one I personally enjoyed the most and kind of got the whole idea. And it also kind of introduced a way of making native apps with hybrid applications. So it would allow you to write one backend app, and you could also write mobile apps for it. It was also the time where we were writing jQuery to make things work and kind of hack the way through so it actually does what we want. And we were actually quite confused, at least I was at the time, to know how I reinitialize components with jQuery. So we got Stimulus in 2017 to kind of help with that, because it gave us a lifecycle to hook into those lifecycle hooks, so we know we can reinitialize those components. Along with it, we got CableReady in 2017, and it was kind of the missing piece that we needed for building more sophisticated Rails apps. So at the time, we were thinking we want to build more advanced Rails applications with a front end that is worth of the Hotwire approach. So we were missing a concept of building reactive applications in Rails. We wanted to build more sophisticated apps with Rails. In fact, reactive real-times and high-fidelity applications. Which is why in 2018 we got Phoenix LiveView and StimulusReflex. Phoenix LiveView is this library for Elixir, and StimulusReflex is that same port for the same library for the Rails ecosystem. Its idea was that we can build reactive Rails applications with the Rails tooling we already know and love. So in 2018, this meant that we use Rails, Stimulus, TurboLinks, CableReady, and Action Cable to make that work. So here's a simple example of what that meant back then. So we had a button, and we would add data reflex attributes on it, and we could say we want it to listen to a click event, and whenever we do, we want to refresh the time we have on screen. So just by doing this annotation, we knew what you want, how to re-render the application, and how to update this state on the front ends. Here's a more advanced example where we have a counter controller, and we set a count instance variable, and we set it to the session value or to 0. And in our view, we would add two data reflex attributes, which is similar to Stimulus if you know about it. So we would listen for the click event and call the counter reflex and either call increment or decrement on that button. And next to it, we would render out the count value. So with that, we get this behavior where we have this count components counting up and down, but we also only have the reflex part, which is incremented or decremented the value, but StimulusReflex knows how to re-render that state. It would know how to update the value, and I felt like that was super magical. You had no extra routes, no logic to declare what you want to re-render. It just knew how to do it, and you had no annotations or declarations what you need to re-render. A few years later, we got the Hotwire umbrella and Turbo in 2020, which meant we got Turbo Drive, Turbo Streams, and Turbo Frames, which also kind of work against what we were doing with StimulusReflex. In 2021, we got Hotwire by default in Rails with Rails 7, and earlier this year, we got Turbo 8 with Morphing, which meant that we got Turbo Page Refreshes and Turbo Model Broadcasts. So there are a lot of terms here, and I guess most of you are confused if you haven't heard about any of that. So I tried to visualize it a little bit in a graph to show what was going on. So on the left side, we got the basic stack in 2018, and you can see that StimulusReflex and the Rails stack was pretty much the same up until the point where this part, where we added some stuff on top of it to make it work and make it reactive. Over the years, Turbo advanced, and we got more tools with Turbo, so we kind of fill more of these boxes in the top part to make it more reactive. And now in 2024, we got even more of those boxes kind of filled, and it just means that we kind of converge our ideas. So the paths are converging, and we have pretty much the same goal to make apps more simple and easy to work with, and we want to simplify our Rails apps and build awesome applications. But Hotwire is the default in Rails now, and our idea was that we want to build applications with the Rails tooling we already know and love, which means we probably have to reevaluate what we're doing with StimulusReflex and how we want to proceed with that going forward. We understood that there was quite some overlap, and we want to make sure that we invest more time to make upstream Hotwire even better for everyone. So the question arises, should you start new apps with StimulusReflex today? I guess the answer is probably not. Not because it's not good or like not advanced enough. I think it's still in many ways better than what Turbo offers today. But just the way we work and kind of have it even in Rails now, I think doesn't really make sense to do new apps with it. Hotwire has come a long way over the years, and as I said, they have pretty similar goals in the end to make it easier for everyone to work with. So in a way, these projects are somewhat competing, and people are confused about the amount of projects and their boundaries, what it actually means. The amount of times I saw people confused about what StimulusReflex is just hard to see. So I feel like simplifying the Hotwire ecosystem wouldn't hurt anybody. So last year, we got CableReady 5 out of the door, which was the biggest release so far for it. And we got StimulusReflex 3.5 released last week. It's been in the making for over 3 years, and it has been such a weird journey so far, because this whole thing was in the making before Hotwire even existed. But we wanted to adapt and make it sure that it actually works with Hotwire in the way people expect it to work. So what we want to announce is that we probably don't want to release any new features for it, just because we want to focus on making Hotwire better for everyone. We had another version which was called Turbo Boost, which was the idea that we take all our concept of StimulusReflex and make them port them over to the Hotwire ecosystem. But you end up with this situation here where you try to add a new standard to the mix and you make it even more confusing. So we don't want to help with that. We want to help with making Hotwire better as it is today. So our idea going forward is we want to focus on improving the greater Hotwire ecosystem so we can make it the best framework in the space and make it the best for Rails. StimulusReflex inspired a bunch of features we have in Turbo today, and I think it also shows what has been possible with it. So most of these features you see here, which ship today in Turbo, I would say are somewhat inspired or directly inspired by what StimulusReflex and CableReady has been doing over the years. We were pushing what's possible with the HTML over the wire approach before the Hotwire approach was even actually a thing, had a proper name. So it has been super innovative, and we have been proving that more than once. And this is not to be arrogant about it, but it just wants to show what we had in comparison. So I try to make a direct comparison of what is in CableReady and what we have in Turbo, and kind of how long it took Turbo to get that same feature concept into the framework. And I think the most notable one is the morphing concept, which almost took 5 years for Turbo to appreciate. And it's important to me that none of this is to blame anyone on these teams or working on these frameworks. It's more to show that we as a community can do better and can be more innovative when we work together to push boundaries. So what can we learn from this? I think there's some formal organizational structure which is missing to push and develop what's possible with Hotwire. There are a bunch of topics that people have to account for when you're building a framework. I try to list some of them here, and I think the most important one are documentation, marketing, and tooling. And it's safe to say that we can improve most of those things here by just doing more community work. There are a lot of unaddressed open issues and pull requests on these repos, and I think we can do better as a community to help them out and make them work for more people. So Stimulus and Turbo are now default in Rails, but who is driving this effort? There's not really a Rails core team who is guiding what's on the plan on the horizon for Hotwire. Rails is thriving because there's a diverse set of companies that have been pushing it over the years, and there have been a lot of people contributing over the years also to Rails to make it what it is today. We want to build a community around Hotwire to push things forward. Rails has a core team, a committers team, and an issues team to help with that. And my question is, can we have something similar for Hotwire? Or should we have something similar for Hotwire? And I personally think we should, because it would benefit most of the people in the community. So what can we take over from StimulusReflex? There are a bunch of features that are not in Turbo today, but are still superior in StimulusReflex. And I think most notably, the developer experience and the install experience, but also partial page updates and morphing beyond the page refreshes they have in Turbo today. So my idea is that I want to bring over as much as possible from what we learned in StimulusReflex into the Turbo framework, so it benefits everyone. We also need more advanced use cases in more diverse companies pushing and building on Hotwire to see what's possible. Most people don't even realize what you can build with Hotwire because they don't even know what's available out there. And the needs of these companies need to be heard and actually represented in somewhat in some kind of, I guess, core team. And while doing that, Rails integration and the documentation for it is key, because people are building these apps in Rails, or most of them are building them in Rails. A lot of companies already rely on Hotwire, and personally, I want to keep building full-stack apps with Rails, and I think Hotwire should enable that. So, with having all of that said, I want to take a moment to talk about the ecosystem and what makes a great ecosystem. In my opinion, a great ecosystem is more than just frameworks and technologies. It's a set of ingredients that make it actually work. And in our case, I think it's a combination of frameworks, tooling, documentation, and community. So let's talk about tools. When I say tools, I mean developer experience tools, editor tooling, browser extension, and so on. So let's look at developer experience improvements in Stimulus. So let's say you have this controller here, which is a user profile controller, and it's a super basic one which has a connect method and a console log inside of it. So when you go to your HTML view and you add the data controller with the user underscore profile, and you go to your browser, you expect to see that log, but you don't. And if you look at this again, you might have seen it's user underscore profile. But Stimulus expect those identifiers to be dasherized, so it would be user dash profile. And these mistakes happen so easily, but I think we can do better. I've been working on this tool called StimulusLSP, which works in VS Code, NeoVim, and we have a few working copies working in Zets, RubyMine, and Sublime, which help you guide you the way through working with Stimulus. So you get this completion for all the controls you have available in the application and helps you write the controls the right way to get the names right. If you still somehow manage to misspell it, it will tell you, and it will also give you a suggestion what it might be, what you were looking for. If you have a new controller which has not existed yet, you can create one from the quick fix action available inside of here. In this case, it will create a controller with the right name at the right location. It also helps you with data actions to complete those. And if you still also misspell one here, it will tell you that something is not right about it and what you could have meant by saying so. So we have a bunch of new features here, which are super exciting, I think. And they're all built on the Stimulus parser, which I've been working on the last few months. It's pretty much a complete overhaul of the parser. And what it does now is it parses all the classes in your project and traces all the imports and export in it. This helps with providing more accurate results and more accurate suggestions. And the other thing we are doing now is we register and track all your controller identifiers, which allows us to give you a list of all the controls you have in your app. And when you click on them, you directly jump to the file which they are defined in. We also give you a new overview of all the controls you have in the application and if they are registered or not. And if you somehow reference one of those and it's not registered yet, it will give you this prompt to register them on the fly for you. It will also help you with adding annotations to the controllers so you know if they are set up the right way. And if they aren't, they will also tell you that something is wrong about it. So all of that is kind of part of the Stimulus LSP 1.0 release, which also supports TypeScript files and controls, and npm support, the new diagnostic and code actions, and a bunch more features. So if you haven't installed this yet now using Stimulus, give it a try and let me know what you think of it. So the next steps for this one, we have this idea of also supporting the tag helpers in Rails. So you can also use it in those Rails helpers and give the same annotations and diagnostics for it. And we also want to support it for import maps the full way. It doesn't quite work with them for all the things, but most of the things work. And we want to add more diagnostics so you can even be more efficient while writing Stimulus. We ship these diagnostics today, but we want to add more of them and extract them into a package called StimulusLint, which is a tool that should give you errors, diagnostics, best practice, and recommendations for your Stimulus controls and application. And the idea is that you can run this as part of your local setup or in part of your CI step to ensure you have no things going wrong in Stimulus. We have the same ideas for Turbo LSP, but there's some more missing pieces that we need to have first to make that work. And we have similar ideas for a Stimulus and Turbo browser extension. We have something working in StimulusReflex today, which is this part here. So you get this floating toggle right there. And when you toggle it, it will give you all the interactive parts on the page. And if you click on one of them, it will show you what triggers it, what will it re-render, and which part of the app it will update when you do so. And I think if you have that kind of tooling available in your Hotwire apps, you will be more productive in writing codes and your apps. So I think developer experience, developer ergonomics matter. And this is the kind of tooling we are missing today to make it even more awesome to work in that stack. If you look at tooling in React Node frameworks, you have that already. But if you have this tooling available in Hotwire, it will be even more awesome to work with it. So next up is documentation and community. And I've been talking to a bunch of people to ask them what they are missing in Hotwire. And most of them tell you, we need more documentation, we need more framework-specific documentation, especially in Rails, and we need more how-tos and in-depth guides on how to approach problems. And if you look at all the tools and libraries and frameworks we have in the ecosystem, it's quite hard to get around it. So we have been building this Hotwire.io initiative, which is a community-driven documentation resource hub, which should help with all these ideas. You want to showcase frameworks, you want to showcase tooling, you want to showcase documentation, and also what the community is building. There are a bunch of frameworks which could help and benefit from that work too. And some of them are even doing some awesome work in documentation. If you look at Turbo Laravel or Symfony UX in PHP, which have been doing a lot of great work in that manner. But if you look at Rails, all you pretty much have is this Ruby gem docs, and that's all there is for Rails. And I feel like that when this is coming from Rails, there should be more than just that. So the idea is that we want to build the JavaScript ecosystem for server-rendered web applications, and we want to help to make that happen. So Hotwire.io features a section for navigating the ecosystem, kind of categorizing all the libraries we know and think are good to be used with Hotwire. And we give you this use case section to give you an idea what you want to build. And if you want to build that kind of feature, you know where to look at. All of this backed by community contents. So if you write or want to write about any of that, we would love to see your contribution to make that even better for everyone. So if you have any ideas, come talk to me or just open a pull request on the repo. This is all built by the community for the community, and I think this is an important aspect of it. So all these people here have been helping out while building this, and I would love to see a name on here too. So I think the framework is not worth anything if people don't know about it and cannot learn about it, and which also kind of led me to this other initiative called Hotwire Weekly. It's a Hotwire newsletter which ships out every Sunday. It focuses on showcasing what's happening in the world of Hotwire. It features the articles, tutorials, and videos from the last week, showcases a library or two if you know to actually tell you that there are other things that exist. And it will tell you all the releases that happened the last week, which might be important for you. And alongside that, we have some improvements for Hotwire.io as well. So by collecting all these issues over the weeks, we have been building a catalog of videos and articles, which you want to showcase on the website too. So coming soon, we have a video section on the website and a categorized and cataloged article section where you can filter down to the library that this article affects. So you know what's going on and how you can find the right resources for that framework and library. And the other next big thing that people have been complaining about is, what should I use for my application? Should I use ESBuild? Should I use import maps? or should I use something else? And I get the confusion, especially if you look at this slide here. With all the tools and stuff we have available now, it's just overwhelming, and I get it. So I've been talking to a lot of people online to help them find the right tool for what they are doing. And I have been asking the same questions over and over again. And I thought, what if I built a asset setup guide that is kind of interactive so they can walk through? So the idea is that they can go through this wizard and click the things they have and needs. And what they get out of it at the end is a personalized recommendation of what they should be using for their Rails app, which I think is cool because then I don't have to answer all these questions. And I think it also helps with people to understand and kind of self-serve in a way. And then if we have that, we would love to also feature installation instructions so you know how to install these in your application that you already might have or want to set up as a new one. So I'm really eager to help fulfill this vision and this idea and future of Hotwire that I've been talking about. But it feels like we need something more to organize and coordinate these efforts. A lot of these things have been very community-driven, and it feels like there isn't really anything official that would help with driving that forward. And all these projects and effort have to be seen by the community, I think, because they are valuable if you're writing with Rails and Hotwire today. And to me personally, it feels like a loss if people don't know about these tools. So my wish is that we can continue building with Hotwire and push what's possible with it. And I think that Turbo 8 has been awesome and it's going in the right direction, but we need more of it. And we need a formal and official way to push things forward. As for me personally, I want to work on these ideas here. Especially optimistic UI is kind of what makes React applications nowadays super awesome and feel natural and alive. But also accessibility concerns and also React compatibility with Hotwire. If you want to think about it, companies are migrating to Hotwire, you want to help them guide them. So we need better React compatibility that we can migrate them over time gradually, instead of doing it in one go. And we need more tools for that to make that work if you want them to also use that stack. So I think we have an awesome pattern going on with the Hotwire ecosystem and what you have with Hotwire. But let's keep improving it and let's keep the Hotwire for it, the feature for it bright. So we can keep building applications in the awesome Ruby framework you all know and love. I want to stand in for a more unified Hotwire ecosystem, and I want to keep building and keep pushing apps with Rails. So my idea of building reactive applications with Hotwire and Rails with the tooling you already know and love, or I already know and love, kind of should manifest that in a way that's what I want to do going forward. So if you want to support that journey, feel free to follow the socials for Hotwire Weekly. You can also sign up on hotwireweekly.com. If you like stickers, I have some stickers with me for Hotwire. And that's all I have. Thank you so much.